welcome to the Liberating Effect. I'm Michelle Overstreet, and I'm happy to be joined by Rabbi Mendy Greenberg and Isaac Smoldon. And we are reviewing the last chapter, which is referred to as the Coda, in the Letters for Life book by Levi Shmotkin. We've reviewed this book chapter by chapter over the last 11 weeks. This is the 12th week and will be our last podcast for this book, although we're scheming another book into the scope of what
scheming makes it sound so bad. We're planning. we're planning.
Well,
joyously planning.
Joyously planning. We're excited about a second book that's written by a different rabbi. So this chapter is called The Courage to Change. And I just feel like this chapter is so rich in information and anecdotes. You know, it's so interesting to read a book where the Holocaust is used as part of the storytelling throughout the book. It isn't just in one incident or another. In this section, they talk about Holocaust survivors or refugees from North African countries, or places where there's political turmoil and trauma, having missing out on crucial stages of cognitive development. This is really speaking to me, right? This is my whole jam, and how those deficiencies can be corrected with proper psychological support. And so I really loved the focus on solutions for trauma in this book. I really love again, you know, it isn't about philosophy as much as it is about practicing habits and behaviors and thinking, not having distorted thinking that puts you at the center, but continually focusing on helping others as a way of helping yourself and healing yourself. And I think that's been a theme throughout the book. I think it's such a healthy perspective on healing and changing, making change in your life. And change takes courage. Mm-hmm. It takes courage. It's hard.
Yeah, and I think that there's obviously a big difference between knowing and then doing. In the last 11 chapters, we've had the opportunities to learn about ways that we can better our lives and better our emotional well-being, better the lives of those around us. But this is where, I've probably said this multiple times, this chapter reminds you that until the rubber hits the road, until we start building on those habits and making those changes, knowing is not simply good enough. And I was reminded when I read this about a book that we read a while ago here at work, Atomic Habits, about how those changes don't have to be this monumentous occurrence. It's about finding these little ways that we can make small incremental changes or small actions. I think the Shabbat candle lighting was a really great example of here's just one small portion of your week where you can do this small changes, light these candles with serenity, and how those little actions and taking that little step, having the courage to just take that little step and be willing to do something, even if it's not something monumental, can better yourself in countless ways in the long run.
Yeah. I also think that there's something very special, powerful about this chapter is about the strong faith that we have the ability to change. Because, you know, we could always talk about how we should try to better ourselves, how, you know, do this, do that. But it really starts with the foundation that really believe that we have it within us, the ability, that it's really possible. And that you have to be convinced about that. It's either you believe it or you don't. And if you don't, then anything you're going to try is not going to work. And I think that's something that's very powerful throughout the book. And it starts off with the first story of that psychologist who was a Holocaust survivor. And talks about how there was a child that there were actually many children that the Rebbe referred to that he should deal with, to the point that there was a certain one that he himself did not think there was anything that could be done to this kid to bring him back and to make him a regular functioning human being, and how he says how the Rebbe kind of guided him through this process, and how the child was by him for a while and he really helped him, and then he left, and then he just went right back to his old ways,
Right.
and how the Rebbe said that they should rescue him, and he thought that was like almost impossible, and he did it because the Rebbe said to do it. And today he's this child who they rescued and brought him back to their program ends up being a functional, regular human being, a father of children.
Yes.
Today. And he says that one of the things was that the Rebbe so strongly believed in the power of each individual that they have it within them that they could change. So there's so many times, we hear so many good ideas, self-help ideas, but then you have to really believe that it's possible. And the Rebbe believed in people. And that's one of the most beautiful things about, I think, throughout the book, and we see a lot in this chapter, is the real belief in the ability of a person that they have it within them to change. And either you really believe it, you can't make that up. That's not something you can fake.
Yeah.
And I connected today actually, which is a special day in general and a personal special day for myself. So today is the 11th day of the Hebrew month of Shvat, which follows the 10th day of the month of Shvat. The 10th day of the month of Shvat, 76 years ago, was the passing of the previous Chabad Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who he survived. Who he first of all started an entire underground Jewish network in communist Russia to continue Jewish faith and Jewish teachings under the communist regime, which forbade any type of religious teaching and behavior. And then finally he was arrested in Russia for doing anti-Soviet work, and he was sent away from Russia. He was in Poland, and then he had to escape Poland in 1940 from the Nazis, and he made it miraculously to the United States and started the Chabad Lubavitch movement in the United States in 1940. He passed away on the 10th day of Shvat, 76 years ago in 1950, and his son-in-law, the Rebbe, who the letters of this book is about, assumed the leadership a year later, officially in 1951. And so every year on the 10th day of Shvat and the 11th day of Shvat, we celebrate the day that he assumed the leadership of Chabad Lubavitch movement. And one of the things that from the very beginning of the Rebbe's leadership, and what we saw and what we see in the book, what we see throughout this book, and there are letters here from 1951 and on, was that idea, that real true faith in the power of the individual. I mean, think about it as a collective, the Jewish people. When the Rebbe started his leadership in 1951, he was dealing with a third of the Jewish people were destroyed, gassed, raped, mutilated, murdered, and he was dealing with survivors. He was dealing with broken people and a broken community. And he himself, in his personal family, he lost many relatives to the Holocaust. A brother, a sister-in-law, a brother-in-law, grandparents, and on and on. So there was a lot of, the Rebbe was not oblivious of where he was and what was going on, who he was talking to. And when he took on the leadership in his inaugural address, he didn't come and say, "Oh, we're going to now live in America. We're in a free country. We're going to survive and lick the wounds of the Holocaust and try to shelter ourselves." But he actually said no, that there's a big vision for the world. There's a big vision for humanity, and the Jewish people play a very important and central role in all of this, and we're going to take it head on. And he was talking to a group of a few hundred people, and the Rebbe said that our mission is the mission of Abraham. What was Abraham? Abraham was brought into a world of when there was everyone was idolaters. His father, Abraham's father, had a idol store. The Midrash, the Talmud teaches us, and Abraham brought into the world the awareness that there's only one God, and everyone was against him. He stood against everybody. He was thrown into a fire for his faith, for this idea, and little by little he influenced the world that today the majority of humanity believe in the concept of one God. It all started from Abraham. And the Rebbe says that is our mission, to continue what Abraham did, to go to every single corner of the world and to bring this awareness to every single human being with love, with acceptance, with kindness, with joy. And I think many people that were there when the Rebbe said that thought this was like a fairy tale. Hello, we just got out of the Holocaust. We just finished the Holocaust. We're in America.
Yeah, I'm fresh out of Auschwitz here.
Yeah, exactly.
How is that the reality, right?
Live and let live, and just hope we don't have another Holocaust again, and that's about it. And that's it. And and many Jewish people kind of have that feeling till today.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just don't bother us, we won't bother you, and let's call it a day. And the Rebbe was the Rebbe said the Rebbe saw, despite seeing the worst of humanity, so that ultimately the human being, a person, people are inherently good because God there's a spark of God in every person. We're created in God's image. And if we believe in that truth in a true way, we could really, really make a massive difference. And it was 36 years ago when we celebrated 40 years of his leadership. It was 1990. I was 11 days old, 11-day-old baby. And in honor of his 40th anniversary, the Rebbe announced that he's going to be giving out a special memento, a special gift to whoever came to celebrate with him in Brooklyn, in New York in 1990. It was this book. This is the Tanya. The Tanya is the fundamental work of Chabad philosophy, written by the first Rebbe. The Rebbe is the seventh Rebbe. The first Rebbe was the one who wrote this book. And he said he's going to give this out in honor of that special day. I was 11 days old, and there was long lines of men, women, and children. And he stood for, I think, about 5 or 6 hours, and he handed out 12,000 of these books. The Rebbe at that time was 87 years old. He was standing, and my mother took me on her arms, and I actually have a video and a picture of receiving this. The Rebbe places it right over here as a little tiny thing, and the Rebbe puts it right over here on my body, and that's what I got as a gift. And I obviously don't remember it. I was 10 days old, 11 days old, and I always think, and I had merited to see the Rebbe many times after that in my first 3.5 years of life, and I study from this. One of the reasons why this looks like this is because I used it every day.
I was going to say, you can tell how good a spiritual leader is by how beat up his copy of this book is, right? I mean,
Yes.
there's some tape on the outside, the binding's but just means it's well used.
It didn't help that my parents let me hang out with it from a very young age, from about 5 years old. I remember actually what happened was, this is kind of getting really personal. I was like 5 or 6 years old, and my father every morning, when he would wake up and do his morning prayers, he would always study from a book like this, and I knew it was from the Rebbe. And I one time said, I wish I would have also had a book like that from the Rebbe. And he looked at me, he's like, you don't know that you have one? I'm like, really? I couldn't believe it. It was about maybe a year or two after the Rebbe passed away. And he said, for sure. And he went right away to the shelf, and he pulled out 7 different books that I received from the Rebbe.
Wow.
And he opened them all up. They were still in the package. Like, it was in a white vacuum-packed little bag, little plastic. There's $1 inside that he gave it together with to each person to give as a gift.
Speaking of making changes and
being accountable.
Being accountable. Here you go, boss.
Oh, you're covering me again,
Yeah, I'll
Isaac?
cover you again.
Oh my gosh.
It's all good. I left $2 in my wallet specifically for this moment and then forgot at the beginning, but that's okay.
How awesome you are.
We got to get some bigger ones of these at some point.
Yeah, we need bigger boats. We need bigger boats, Rabbi. Can you help us out with
Yes,
that?
or we could just empty them out and again.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. We had one that was full that I think went with you.
Oh, okay.
Oh, maybe it's that one that I was thinking.
They're all still here somewhere.
They're all stacked up around.
Anyway.
So the idea was, so I had these 7 books. And one of the things I think about is that, the Rebbe was an unbelievable Jewish leader in his intelligence and his wisdom, his influence. Leaders, the presidents of the United States corresponded with him. The leaders of the state of Israel would correspond with him. He had influence on what type of government was done in Israel. He had influence on policy in America and many, many other things. And, you would think a leader at that age with that influence, why is he standing and spending time with 11-day-old babies, right, like me, that I wouldn't even remember this encounter? And it wasn't just once. It was many times that I had the merit to be in his presence. A guy like that, a leader like that, he's busy with world things, with big stuff.
Yeah.
not with little babies. And
I read that sometimes world dignitaries would fly in to New York or Washington, D.C., and they would visit him before they would go to visit the president.
correct. For instance, the famous Senator Joe Lieberman, remember him?
Yes.
He was actually running to be a vice president with Al Gore.
Yeah.
He came to get a blessing from the Rebbe before he was sworn into Washington to be a U.S. Senator in 1989. So I mean, leaders from all over, and here the Rebbe is spending time with me and thousands of other babies like me. And I always think about that. And one of the things I think is, and I couldn't even read this book, obviously. I was 11 days old. It took me years till I was able to even read this and understand it and
Because it's
appreciate
in
it.
Hebrew.
It's in Hebrew, but it's deep stuff. So, even even if you can read Hebrew, a 10-year-old can understand this. You have to be, 16, 17, 18, 20. So I was only able to start appreciating this book in a real way, only about 15 years after he gave it to me.
Wow.
Which was years after he was physically not present with us. So I think one of the most powerful ideas of what the Rebbe is, and this is very much connected, I think, with this book, is that the Rebbe believed in each person. When he saw an 11-day-old baby, it wasn't just another cute baby, which very many of us just see it like, oh, just children, But to him, there was no such thing as just a child. Every person, a living being, every living human being was an atomic potential. This is someone that has the potential to transform the world, in one way or another. And he did not see this as wasting his time or not utilizing his time the best way. When he came in contact with an 11-day-old baby, he was doing the most important thing in the world. There was nothing more important. Not the President of the United States, not the Prime Minister of Israel, not policy, not anything. But communicating with 11-day-old baby that consciously will never remember that moment. And I think that's really the message a lot that we see in this chapter as well and throughout the book is that belief the faith in each human being that nothing could ever change, nothing could ever break that he continuously believes in each person. He has a story over here later on about a guy that he fell into drugs later in life. He was married with children.
Oh, yeah.
And he fell into drugs, and he had a friend that lived in Israel, and their family called him and said, we don't know what to do with him. He's stuck in his basement. Could you come and help us? And he comes. He flew in. He left his family in Israel. He came to New York. He sits with his friend, with his old pal for many years before in his basement. And after having a long conversation with him, he sees he's not getting anywhere. And he tells him, listen, he realizes he can't help him. And he says, I think the best thing you should do is to write a letter to the Rebbe. And he was very uncomfortable. He didn't want to. So he sat with him all night and got him to write a letter. And then finally, and he had to explain to his friend, you can't hide from the Rebbe. If you want the Rebbe's help and advice, you have to be open. You have to be ready to tell him what exactly the whole story is from the beginning to the end. And as he concluded the letter, his friend said, okay, you could give this over to the Rebbe, but with one condition, that you cannot go through the regular means. The regular means is to give it to the Rebbe's secretary, and the secretary would give it over. He was afraid that they would read, they would see what's going on. He was ashamed. So he said, you have to make sure it goes to the Rebbe directly. So his friend decided he's going to the Rebbe's personal home, which was kind of off limits because there was thousands of people always knocking down the Rebbe's door. So they tried giving the Rebbe's and his wife's and the Rebbitzins home privacy, but he kind of broke the rules and knocked on the Rebbe's door at 7 a.m. and the housekeeper opened the door, and she kind of said, get away, get out of here, go to the office like everyone else. He knocked again, and she answered the door, and he just stuffed the letter in her hand and walked away. And he kind of just did it. And then he waited in the morning, a few hours later, when the Rebbe would come to his office in the morning, and he saw how the Rebbe looked at him, especially, and he realized that there was a communication, and about a half an hour later, he got a response. And one of the things he says, he's not going to say everything that the Rebbe said, but one of the things that he quotes is that the Rebbe said that he said this guy wrote in his letter that 6 months ago he fell into drugs. And then he says how he cannot get out of it, and he needs it. He's dependent upon it. There's no way out. That's what he's telling the Rebbe. Yeah. And the Rebbe says, you say yourself that it was only 6 months ago that you started with drugs. So till 6 months ago, you were able to survive without it. So how are you telling me that there's no way out of it when you yourself say it's only for 6 months that you're doing this?
Yeah.
In other words, he kind of showed the person that within himself that he had it within him to get out of this situation. And the fact that he feels that he's locked, that he's in shackles, and that he's no way out is an illusion that very often each one of us tells ourselves in our own situations, there's no way out. This is it. And the Rebbe really believed that there's no such thing, that you're kind of imprisoning your soul, and you're imprisoning your potential. And if you're able to see past that, you could get out of crazy a lot worse situations. That's
really the essence of this entire chapter, that you can change anything that you want to change.
That's right.
And I love, we have a saying here at my house. We say we don't shoot our wounded, because we have so many kids that come and go for a lot of different reasons. They come and then they backslide, or they feel unworthy, or they're afraid that they're not going to be successful, or they're afraid to get too close to people because they might get hurt, and they backslide. And it's so, so, so important to just hold firm and steady in your care for them, validating that they are worthy, that they do matter, that value on human life is so essential. And how amazing is it that a group of people that has been through genocide and treated as though they were not important at all, and literally murdered, and all the horrible things that are part of that, the core philosophy is that everybody matters. And I will say this, my own personal experience about joining you at community events for your people are amazing. I see people there that are friends that are not Jewish, and they come because they're welcomed. That it is the most open, non-judgmental, community-friendly group there is. And everyone is welcome, and everyone is joyful. And I was struck by that. The first couple times that I came to events, I was like, wow, this feels so good. This is amazing. This is what we create here. I understand much more about how your comments about we have very similar philosophies, and that is so true.
Yes.
And I also think that there's a piece where people have to be willing to change. They have to be open to the information that's coming to them from other people, and not just asking everybody else in their circle to change. It's so easy, I think, for people to get focused on what everybody else should be doing to make me feel happy or normal or whatever the case may be. But if it keeps circling back around to you, the problem is you. And at some point, you have to be willing or able to admit that it's about you. It isn't about everybody else. And there's the person has to be willing to look at themselves and walk forward. It talks about a person is charged to go from strength to strength and walk forward for their entire life. This is really our duty. The Creator gives each person all of the strength they need to go forward. And I so love that. That's on page 199, and it's just, I marked it with one of my little tabs because I love the idea that we are given that as it's really a instruction, but we're given everything we need.
It's a little bit cliche, but that's a quote that I have over. No one could see it, but it's over right above my workstation. Is it whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And it's very simple, but it's important to remember that for each of us, that by saying that we can't do something or incapable of doing something, we're giving up before we've even started. Mm-hmm. And it's something that we see a lot here. There is that temptation to give up on people because we've seen the same pattern of behavior over and over and over and over and over and over again. But just because we've seen that for days and weeks and months and years here with someone does not mean that all hope is lost, that something is impossible, that, this time couldn't be the time that they are able to make a change. And it's important that we hold space for that, but it also requires that person to see that they are capable of that. And sometimes in holding space for the fact that change is possible and reinforcing that, we're able to show those individuals that we work with here that they should see that within themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. I think coming out of homelessness or addiction, to the point of your story about the rabbi letter, I think that and it talks about this, that no individual should consider themselves or should be considered by others as having terminated their usefulness, even though a long time of fruitlessness has elapsed. Given the proper inspiration and stimulus and support, the state of winter can easily and suddenly be changed into spring and blossom time, and will eventually ripen into good fruits for God and man. And I think that so many times people get stuck. They get a little bit stuck. Winter here is long. We experience seasonal affective disorder and depression, and people kind of go inside, and both literally and physically. And I think that, and with the clients we work with, that sometimes that state of winter can be discouraging. But the reality is that in the world that we work in, I think a lot of times that whole time God is working. He's working and working, and there's changes to their heart. There's changes to their way that they're thinking, and they can rally and rekindle their belief in themselves. One of the reasons that I feel like our job training programs here are so important is because clients who are in job training programs feel needed. We need them. We had both of our cafe managers were out sick today, and I got a note at 7:30 this morning that said the cafe will be closed today. The managers are sick. And I sent a note back that said, can you please ask the interns to come in and run the cafe? We have 2 interns that come over and work there on a regular basis. They know what to do. Just ask them to come and do it. And of course, no one pushed back on that, but I could feel like the wave of like, oh no, this could go wrong, And that's true. It could go wrong. But you know what happened? We have 2 young people in there that are smiling ear to ear and so proud of what they're doing. And a young lady who came over and said, hey, I'm kind of bored. Is there something I could do? Could I help out in there?
Wow.
And that really is a little tiny statement about people need to be needed. They need to know that they have value. And sometimes the littlest things can offer value for them that sparks a much bigger thing.
That's right.
And gets them to the next place.
Correct. Yep. 100%.
Yeah. There's a section in this book called Despair's Seductive Attraction. And man, I read this just weeks after I lost my husband. And this was so helpful in just the reminder to, keep the faith. The fact that we are taught that we have unlimited powers of our soul, and that faith time every day is important. And I really use this as sort of a, like, this is what you don't do, right? This is what you do. This is what you don't do. And I want to tell a funny story too, that we're probably going to go a little longer today on this last one, but I was thinking about something. I met the rabbi really just weeks after losing my husband, and he called and asked if I would come and speak at an event that he was having. And, I wasn't in any condition to really do that. I was fragile, emotionally fragile, and sort of floating in this space that was like, oh my gosh, what just happened? But the amazing thing to me, in hindsight, this is a year later, right? The amazing thing is that I probably would have just said no and stepped away. But you know what you brought? You brought a book. And you know what I love? I love books. And I read books. And books have always been a comfort, a balm. And you could have probably said anything to me, and I would have said no, except for, I have a book that I would like you to read. And I was saying to someone else this week, I'm fascinated by the way God works, because anything else that you had said and invited me to speak in that condition that I was in, I probably would have said, I'm not capable of doing that. But you didn't say that. You said, I have a book that I want you to read. And I thought, well, I can read a book. I've been reading since I was 3. And so it's really been an incredible blessing and a pleasure to get to know you and your wife and your family and the people that are part of your congregation and community. And I feel like that was just completely God at work, because I would not have responded positively to anything. But you said, I have a book.
Wow.
And I'm fascinated by that. That I could write a whole book about that right there.
There you go.
Right? I mean, that sort of divine intervention, if you will. So that's just a little sidebar that I think is very interesting. And there's more to that story, but that piece I think is really relevant. And the one thing that I really used a lot in this book was the tools for, continuing to stay positive and things that you do to stay engaged and avoiding despair. And then this chapter also has a piece about the atomic power inside of us. Isaac, you mentioned that. It's quite something.
And to back up your point, I think every week that we've come in to record, there is some conversation that we've had that day beforehand or that week that ties in with exactly what we're talking about, or even in just my personal life, like I've shared in episodes past. It's always interesting how when we're made aware of these things that we can look for, how suddenly they appear. And I think we had talked about previously, like even just stuff outside of the book, when we were looking for furniture, looking for kitchen equipment,
right?
Sometimes that stuff just appears randomly. We were looking for a way to get a bigger treatment house, we had a waiting list. We needed to get more people into our treatment program. Well, something just appeared. And my jeans are still wet because I've been shoveling snow and moving furniture today right before we came in. But then again, tying back to the theme of this Coda, when it appears, you have to be willing and able to take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. It's one thing to recognize it. It's another thing to go move the furniture, shovel the snow, do all the things that our skeleton crew and staff out there have been doing this week to make it happen. It doesn't make it easy, but it does mean that we've been provided with everything that we need, that we're capable of doing it, that we can do it if we're willing.
Yeah, the opportunity and preparedness, when opportunity and preparedness meet, but it is uncanny. We don't go without what we need here. And a lot of times we're right hanging by our fingernails when it shows up. But it's so frequent that we talk about something and it appears, and we think about something and it shows up, or someone calls and says, can you, 15 years later, I still sometimes go, can you believe it? and then some of the people around me are like, yeah.
Wow.
But there really is a lot of this book doesn't directly address the mystical spiritual quality of the rabbi's letters and the information that is shared, but there is clearly a mystical spiritual element to this that is ubiquitous. It isn't. You don't just say, I have to be a Jewish person to apply this. You can say this can be applied to everybody, and it would make their life better, and it would make their family relationships better. And I think I read all the way through the end notes, and there's so many notes in here that are so interesting.
You have an end note marked?
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5. I have 5 end notes marked. But part of it is because this is where the really spiritual stuff is, and I'm fascinated by that.
Hit all the spiritual things in the back.
Yes, it's really the like a lot of the stories are cool. The stuff we've talked about is cool, but the end notes. I mean, this talks about this is the way the world was created in a way that a man should contribute to his own accord, not only improvements but corrections. That change that we're talking about. So long as there exists even one person in the universe, that is in itself evidence that the world still needs repair, and repairing the outside world goes tandem with repairing one's internal world. And so I really love, if you've been following in the book, don't skip the end notes. I mean, I know it's weird. It's like reading the references for a research paper, right?
Right.
But really, some of these end notes are just rich with, as somebody with 2 degrees in psychology, there's an end note on page 251 that says, there are, of course, many psychologists who heal effectively using unconvoluted methods. It's very direct, straightforward. This is especially the case since one professor, and Viktor Frankl is who they're talking about, who wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning and who survived the Holocaust, famous man, found the inner courage to declare, contrary to the well-known individual who founded this form of therapy, Freud, sorry, Richard Lazur, he's a Freudian theorist. Faith in God and an overall religious inclination give meaning to life and are the most constructive paths to healing. Nevertheless, for a number of reasons, this approach has not permeated many professional circles, and it is worthwhile to find out more about the psychologist. It's basically saying, does your psychologist have faith?
That's right.
Right? So don't skip the end notes. Maybe it's
actually, you're saying that there's actually an answer to the Rebbe wrote to somebody, and maybe it's in one of the end notes of here, to a Jewish family that was seeking out a psychologist for their child, I think. And they were asking the Rebbe about should they choose this one or should they choose that one. I guess one of the questions was someone Jewish or someone non-Jewish. And the Rebbe said whether they're Jewish or not doesn't make a difference. The question is if they have faith or not.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And so the Rebbe said to choose someone that believes in God.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, I think as we sort of wrap up this book, first, I don't want it to be over because I'm not done talking about the end notes, which are the deep spiritual stuff, which I could talk about for days. But thank you, Rabbi, for sharing the book at a time when I really needed this book, and for reaching out and inviting me into your world at a time when I really wasn't looking to go into another world, but I've been blessed by your presence, by your people, by the information and the meals and the joy that we've shared. I think about joy, and I think about your 2 boys dancing on at the celebration for the
Hanukkah.
Hanukkah candle lighting. It was just adorable. And so I really want to thank you for agreeing to do this podcast with us. I think it's been really rich. Isaac, as always, you're a rock star. You were quiet today. You're more quiet today than normal.
It's been good to use this as a point of self-reflection and reflection about what we do here. This was not something that I ever would have had on my radar before Michelle put it on my radar. And so thank you, Rabbi, for allowing us to have these conversations. I'm very hopeful and excited that, these conversations for us, this is the last episode that we record about this book, but I feel like the fact that this space and this, our YouTube and the fact that we are able to now hold space for these conversations to live forever, hopefully, is something that is an immense source of pride for me. Mm-hmm. And so I really want to thank you for being willing to, partner with us and incorporate us into your community.
Thank you, and I want to thank both of you for being the the host of this beautiful initiative, and I also want to thank the Rebbe, because I'll tell you, now I'm hearing all of this, and the fact that I reached out to you was going out of my comfort zone, right? Why should you would, just like you're saying, you would never listen. I was telling myself the same thing, and really every single day when I reach out to somebody else that not necessarily is part of this, and the cynical side of me says, why would they want to even listen to what you have to say?
Right.
And it's only because of the Rebbe's education that I received from him, and that faith in believing in the potential of every single person, to believe that it's not, and I love how you say it wouldn't matter what I said, but it's the book that did it. In other words, it's not about, in other words, if you're going on your own power and your own on yourself, then you're only just yourself. But if you realize that you're a conduit and that you're a ambassador for something greater, for something more divine, then it's not about you. It's about the message you bring, and the message you bring will resonate and will inspire people, and people are thirsty for it.
Yes.
People want it. And here's a perfect example that I didn't know everything that was going on in your mind. Obviously, I had no idea. I just was kind of trying to do something that I thought was good. But here I see, a year later, how much an impact it had on you personally, and then I'm sure all the many people that are listening and being inspired by this. And I would never have done this on my own. It was something that because of the Rebbe, who assumed the leadership 76 years ago, and who was kind enough that spent time with me as a 10-day-old baby to make me feel important, make me feel special. That till today, I'm 36, and I look back, I'm like, this world leader spent time with me. Wow. I better do something about it, right? So thank you, and this is really a beautiful thing, and I'm sure we're gonna continue with something new.
Yeah, we're not going away forever.
We got to find a new path. So thank you so much, both of you, for being part of the Liberating Effect. We are recording in the My House Podcast studio, and our producer and editor is Ozzy Keener. And thank you again for joining us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.